Hello and welcome to today's episode of Health University, where I'm delighted to introduce to you and share conversation with Gabriella Rosa. And Gabriella is coming to us from down under in Sydney. And although she does spend much time over in Boston attending Harvard, where she's getting her doctorate in public health. So thank you for spending the time with us here, Gabriella. I'm going to read your bio because I don't want to miss anything important. And then
Oh,
I will invite you to elaborate upon it if I have missed anything important. So, Gabriella Rosa is a fertility specialist, a reproductive health educator, and a Harvard University awarded scholar, as well as an accomplished and experienced business leader and entrepreneur. She created the world's first entirely virtual and holistic fertility clinic. As the founder and CEO of the Rosa Institute, she leads a team of holistic specialists currently serving patients on every continent other than Antarctica. So you're not serving the penguins, I take it. Her,
no.
tr- Her treatment methodology has become an authority in its industry for identifying and addressing biochemical obstacles that guide couples in overcoming infertility and recurrent miscarriage, which is so heart-wrenching, despite previous reproductive difficulties and failed treatments. Through various programs, Gabriella and her team have educated over 140,000 couples in more than 110 countries, excuse me. She is also the host of Talk Sex with Gabriella Rosa podcast. And is that podcast still up and running? Can I direct
It's
people to it?
people can find it. Yeah,
Fantastic.
absolutely.
Okay, we'll make sure it's in the show notes so people can make use of that as well. So welcome, Gabriella, and thank you for joining us today. Did I
My
miss anything?
pleasure. No, I think you got you hit all the notes. What can I
Okay,
tell you? This is
excellent.
very, very lovely introduction. Thank you.
Oh.
Um, and I think that, one of the things that makes it wonderful to be able to talk to someone like you is the combination of all the expertise and knowledge,
Yes.
that I'm sure we'll be able to share. So thank you for having me.
Oh, I agree. I think it's going to be a very rich conversation. And we're calling the topic fertility breakthroughs because I think that we've been hearing about the fertility pandemic, epidemic, 1 in 5 now suffering. And I think you and I would agree that much of that population is not necessarily infertile. They're struggling with, physiological issues that are affecting their fertility, but they are not technically infertile, and that when we reverse those illnesses or those imbalances, they can restore their own health, including their fertile health, and enjoy a healthy pregnancy and a healthy baby and a healthy postpartum and family. So, may I begin by asking you, will you tell us your origin story? There has to be to have created something so rich. There has to be a story behind it. So, I'm dying to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think that the story is just that I don't give up.
Mhm.
That's that's the beginning and the end. That's all there is to it. I started this business and this clinic in 2001.
Mhm.
And at that time, or before that, I guess, I was studying to become a naturopathic practitioner, a naturopathic
Mhm.
doctor. And I very quickly realized that I've always been into mastering things, like really getting very good at whatever it is that I did.
Mhm.
And this was no different. When I graduated, I knew that I wanted to make a difference in a area.
Mhm.
And I wasn't really quite sure what area that would be. And it was really interesting because at the time, for the entire period that I was doing my Bachelor of Health Sciences and naturopathy, I was working for an obstetrician gynecologist. And
Ah.
I used to love
Mm.
seeing the babies
Oh.
coming in six
Oh.
weeks postpartum, like these cute bundles of just like delightfulness
Mm.
and the moms and like obviously it was always so lovely every time that a baby came in, like, and of course the mum had to go and have her gynecological checkup. It
Mhm.
was the receptionist, i.e.
Mhm.
me, who got to cuddle the babies,
Right.
and so it just, I think that really where that love for babies came from. And when I was deciding what to specialize in, I said to my boss at the time, who's being a lifelong mentor, wonderful man, I think I might specialize in pediatrics. And he goes, Gabriella, and he was like, picture this. He's a Scottish man, super, super strong Scottish accent, loveliest, kindest, sweetest person,
Mm.
right? Looks at me and goes, Gabriella, that is the worst idea you've ever had. I'm like, thanks, Jim. And he was always so encouraging of me. Anything that I said to him was like, oh, that's great. That's so
Right.
wonderful. Go for it. And then this one day, he's like, that is the worst idea you've ever had. I'm like, whoa,
Well,
where did
that's
that
worth
come
listening to
from?
then. If somebody is always encouraging and comes up with that strong
Exactly.
statement, then there's something
Absolutely.
in
That was
there.
the point that I realized, hang on a second, this is not a good idea
Yes.
because he exactly
Indeed.
that. He was always so encouraging. And then this one day he was like, worst idea you've ever had. I'm like, okay, let's go back to the drawing board. I didn't even question him, but I just said, why did I say that? And he goes, well, first of all, your patient is not your patient, is the
Right.
parent of your patient, and your patient can't speak.
Right.
It's terrible.
Right.
Like, yeah, actually, you
Uh-huh.
make an excellent point. Thank you very much. I will find a different
Right. And
speciality.
the parent of the patient is
It's
that
very
the
anxious.
patient is very anxious and it's going to be very
Exactly.
hard to please. Uh-huh.
Precisely, especially if you think, sick babies. I mean, babies aren't usually sick, and when they are sick, it really is something quite
Mhm,
drastic.
mhm,
And so I immediately re kind of charted my course to
mhm.
something else, which I didn't know what it was going to be. And one day I remember going to clinic because, you have to do a million clinic hours to be able to graduate. And I remember going to clinic and seeing this little poster on this stairwell that I just kept going up, natural fertility clinic hours, additional clinic hours for students. I'm like, that's it, fertility. That's what I'm going to specialize in. And so that essentially was the moment, and it's really interesting because I was reflecting this last weekend on how I've made the most massive decisions of my life. And each time, the ones that were like really, really, really large,
Yeah.
huge, like course changing decisions have all come from these moments of like, yeah, I'll just specialize in fertility.
Yeah. I
I'll just start my
completely
clinic now.
Yeah, I completely understand. And I think I might reframe it a little bit in that life, these life altering decisions, these most important decisions don't come from our brain. They come from our
Absolutely.
heart, our inspiration, whatever that life force is that speaks through us, has a moment of speaking to us.
Yes,
And if we're wise enough and clear
we
enough
listen.
or vulnerable enough, we say, yeah, I'll do that. So
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
that's brilliant. I think that's
Yeah.
brilliant.
And it's funny because like that's how I decided that I was going to go to Harvard. Like I had no business going to Harvard. I was living in Sydney, Australia, two kids, like clinic, like all the things that
Mhm.
you could possibly imagine that would mean like, what are you thinking? But
Mhm.
this one day I just kind of went, yeah, I'm just going to do a 7-year degree. There we go. Let's go.
Brilliant.
And so I'm in year six, which is very, very good.
Amazing.
But
Congratulations
it's
for your
thank
perseverance.
you.
Mhm.
Thank you. But so that's essentially like I think that when I'm asked the question of like the origin story, it really was that. And then of course, as I started working with women's health and seeing people who were struggling to get pregnant, it was always kind of like a year or a couple of years.
Yeah.
Um, that basically continued for about a decade. And of course, I started to become known for the person to come to if I was just, having difficulty conceiving.
Right. And
And
this
then
was in a
about
brick and
10
mortar.
years in,
This was in a
this was in my
physical.
brick and mortar clinic.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yes, yes. Then 10 years into it, I had a really interesting event, which was I had a patient who was referred to me by someone I knew in business, actually. It wasn't, so basically just referred to me, this person that we obviously mutually got to know. And this lady had tried multiple failed cycles of IVF, and she had been trying for 10 years to have a baby. And so I was really quite reticent, like as she was saying, like, oh, I'd like to prepare for IVF. I'm like, yeah, I don't know that I can help you. Like, I don't know that this is going to be something that is going to be useful for you. Um, and I basically was trying to refuse treating
Right.
her.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I was trying to say like, just maybe no, I don't think that I can help you. And I literally did say that to her, and she said, "Look, Gabriella, here's the thing. I'm going to give up anyway. Like, I just want to be healthier before I
Mhm.
go to my next cycle.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I guess, okay, well, just know that I don't think this is going to be enough for
Mhm.
you to be able to like overcome 10 years of infertility so that we're clear, right?
Yeah.
At the outset. So of course, I treat her and her partner. I always treated couples, always, and
Mhm.
so I treated her and her partner, and 4 months later, they were pregnant for the first time ever,
On their
natural
own,
conception.
natural
Yeah.
conception.
And
Exactly.
I was like, okay, this is very weird. Very, I
Mhm.
don't think that this was the thing. Maybe it was just luck of the draw, whatever. Like, I really
That's
don't think
fun.
that this
That's
was
funny
it.
that you having done the treatment would say, "Oh, it wasn't the treatment."
No, it wasn't the treatment. I really was quite adamant that had to be some kind of fluke, right? And then a few months after her came another lady who, in fact, was a couple, and she was very uninterested in getting treatment, as you can imagine, for someone who had been trying for 19 years.
Oh Lord.
Also, multiple IVF cycles. By this time, she was 43. She
Mhm.
was over it. She didn't want to be there. Her husband's like, I really want to try this one last thing. And this woman is like, do it
I'm
yourself kind of
exhausted.
thing,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Like, I don't want this anymore. And I
Mhm.
think that, in the end, I basically just told her, I said, listen, obviously I can't make miracles happen. If one person is not willing, then obviously this is not going to work. So, and I don't know that this is going to be enough anyway, but I
Mhm.
did treat this one woman and maybe something helped. But, like, you guys have to be decided. You have to figure out if this is what you want or not.
Mhm.
Anyway, similar thing. Long story short, she basically lost 15 kilos, improved her health in many ways, like lots of improvements overall for them as a couple. And then about 5 months later, she was pregnant for the first time ever,
On her
again,
own.
naturally.
Amazing.
And, after multiple failed cycles and things that hadn't worked. So at that point, I actually became very curious because I was very skeptical
Mhm.
that this was enough, that what I was doing, even though, because I had my background in working for an obstetrician for like 6 years, a
Mhm.
gynecologist for about 6 years, and I saw the ins and outs of how those processes worked, and there was a lot of different. Like, and then after I graduated, I worked in a medical center, in an integration medical center with
Mhm.
multiple doctors for several years. So I had that exposure to very systematized, protocolized, process and frameworks,
Right.
which I began utilizing in the way that I worked, even though that's not how I was trained, because as you are aware, naturopathic medicine is, it can be very subjective, let's put it
Right.
that way. And so, but I
Customized.
started to really, sorry,
Customized.
yeah, it's customized, but in some ways, I think that it's not like traditional Chinese medicine where there is a system.
I
And
see. Okay.
so
I
you
see.
work on the system that has
Yes.
been around for 5,000 years,
Yes. I see what you're saying now.
Yeah. And so with naturopathic medicine, you do have massive variation of
Mhm.
quality,
Mhm.
in various terms,
Mhm.
whether it's, and look, I'm speaking from the perspective that I was trained in Australia,
Yes.
right? It is different in the US, but what I'm basically getting at is that level of training and expertise varies massively across the
Yes.
globe. And
Well,
so,
across the globe and across the US. So
oh gosh, and across the streets, like,
exactly, exactly.
you
So
name it.
listeners, buyers, really beware. When you want or need a fertility specialist, don't, do your own vetting or find,
I think it's
referrals or
like, exactly. And
yes.
what you're saying, I think that it's even another step. It's
Mhm.
actually look at the track record of the person who actually is providing the treatment. Because what I see often, and you probably will see the same, somebody did a 2-day course, decided there will be a fertility coach. They've probably done my program and taken all the information and are delivering that, which has happened many times
I
before,
know, I know. It's crushing.
right? And they call themselves, I don't know what they're like,
Experts. Yeah.
fertility expert or whatever, expert,
Mhm.
fertility coach. Which, look, hey, I have no problems, with the fact that I think everything serves. But the problem I have is that I am very cautious with my patients in particular, because the demographic of patients that I treat, they're not your usual kind of top of the line infertile couples.
Mhm.
They're usually the people who have done multiple things that have not worked. They have done multiple failed treatments. They have experienced recurrent miscarriages. They have,
Mhm.
essentially been through years of infertility.
Well,
When I actually, so yeah.
if I may, I actually do take issue with people claiming to be expert when they haven't proven themselves, either with training and testing and then years of experience. And of course, one can become an expert, but the providers need to be mindful and respectful and ethical, not to be wasting potentially precious time.
And that's the thing. It's the
Mhm,
fertility potential that really
mhm,
worries me, because by the
mhm.
time somebody has wasted their time on doing seed cycling for a year, then what? Then they're a year worse off in the potential outcomes that they can actually achieve. So anyway, that's my little bracket. I'm off my soapbox. Going
No,
back to the
no, I,
story.
I think we were we had but one foot on the same soapbox, because I do feel so passionate about it, and I'm always trying to caution people, the listening audience and viewing audience, to really vet the person. Here in the
Mm,
States, we have an organization called the Acupuncture and TCM Board of Reproductive Medicine, where people have gone through pretty rigorous testing post grad to
mm,
demonstrate a working knowledge of both conventional and traditional Chinese medicine, so that we can really marry the two and
yeah.
deliver results that support either trying to conceive naturally, or going through advanced reproductive therapies, which up here are super expensive, so you don't want to be.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, no, and this is the other thing too, is the fact that any fertility treatment is expensive. So, and we know that in terms of IVF, 70% of cycles fail.
Hmm.
So, if that's the case, and we know also published data that you have an average of 8 IVF cycles to get a close to an 80% live birth rate, you're talking the cost of a house in many states, in many
Hmm.
countries.
Hmm.
And so there's all of those issues that I think are important to take into account. But so this couple, of course, after 19 years of infertility, conceived, and at that point, I became very curious, because I was like, okay, maybe there is something to this. you know, Maybe, just maybe, this could be the answer for some people who have been stuck for a long time. So at that point, I decided to test my theory.
Hmm.
And I decided, the hypothesis was set that, okay, maybe this makes a difference after all. And mind you, I had seen it work. Obviously, I've had mentors, and the original mentor that I had, who trained me
Hmm.
for many years, she had already a 30-year career spanning in treating fertility and treating couples. And so I could borrow the certainty of her results
Right.
and her expertise from the perspective of like, okay, this clearly does work in terms of being able to beat some level of improvement.
Hmm.
But of course, at the time, I didn't really have the words yet to be able to understand or to describe or even to measure what that looked like. And that was the first time that I actually realized that, okay, I need more scientific training, but before I did realize that, I decided that I was going to test my hypothesis and only take on couples that had been, because prior to those two people, I had been taking on couples who had essentially wanted to prepare for a healthy pregnancy,
Hmm.
which usually meant that they were trying for maybe 6 months,
Hmm.
or 3 months. And I started to only take on people who had been trying to conceive or overcome recurrent miscarriage or failed treatments for over 2 years.
Okay.
Don't ask me why I picked 2 years. It just felt like that was the the
Well, it's an
the
indicator.
frontier where
Hmm.
I hadn't yet been,
Hmm.
because I was kind of treating people at the year mark. And so I thought, you know what? 2 years sounds like a good plan. But the other reason why I picked 2 years was actually that I felt these two women showed me a very interesting thing, which was why I ended up picking 2 years or more. they weren't anxious
Mm,
and, you know, like over the top, like, oh my God, I need to get pregnant by yesterday. In
mhm.
fact, they were quite resigned about never getting pregnant
I see.
again, ever in their
So
life.
you
They
could
were
take
like,
that variable out. You could take the anxiety variable out. Yes.
precisely, exactly. And so
Mhm.
what happened was, for what happened with these people, and that was the thing that I saw. And for me, that worked better because I'm so impatient with the, I have to be pregnant
Mhm.
yesterday, and I'm not willing to stop smoking and drinking alcohol. Like, I'm sorry. If you
Yes.
have been infertile, get off your soapbox
Mhm.
and go and do the things that you know you need to do. Like I had a consult the other day,
Well,
and I
you're
get
going to
it
need to
that,
do it as soon as you get that positive pregnancy test, for goodness sake. So why
oh,
why
dear
would you
Lord.
not do
But,
it at preconception? I'm sorry,
you
you
know,
say you had a consult just the other day?
I had a couple telehealth, of course, so you get people from everywhere. And this couple were sitting in a car, and I'm talking to them, and I'm kind of going like, are you, I, are you guys smoking? 7 years of infertility, talking to a fertility specialist, aka me, on a Zoom call, literally smoking in the car. I'm like, where do we begin? And I get it. Look, health inequalities, inequities, these things are real. The education, public health education and understanding doesn't get to everybody equally or even in a decent way, to be honest. But
Gabriella,
you do have to question.
yeah, are you suggesting that these people didn't have a clue that smoking might be a problem?
This is the sad part, Susan, is that I'm not suggesting. The sad part is that they were that uneducated.
Oh, wow. That actually
Yeah.
breaks my heart. That is.
And they broke my heart. It literally broke my heart because when I said to them, do you realize that these are the consequences of you smoking? No, nobody told us that.
Mm,
I'm like, okay, so let me tell you very clearly.
mhm,
This and these are the things that you need to know about. You are going to become menopausal 5 years earlier than women who don't smoke. You've already been
mhm,
trying for 7 years. DNA fragmentation in sperm is going to be much worse, and there's lots of issues here
mhm,
that are going to be contributing to you being infertile for 7 years and beyond. And what will happen as a result of that is that you are probably going to run out of time to have a baby trying.
mhm,
Oh, and it was a moment of like realization.
mhm,
And, all I could do at that point was like, okay, the one thing that I would recommend you do is go to a doctor for a smoking cessation
mhm,
treatment. That's the first thing. And that's really right now the only thing.
mhm,
Because when somebody is starting, sometimes I get people who ask me, what is it that you do that's so different? Well, it depends. And this is why it depends, because sometimes I get somebody who, as a couple, eat McDonald's 7 days a week and, drink, smoke, do drugs and think that I'm infertile. Surely it can't be my lifestyle. Surely it can't be the things that I'm doing. And then other times I get the people who have already, like they have a better lifestyle than me. Like
mhm,
they purify the air, they eat only organic, they, don't go out for meals because it's not prepared with the sunlight of the
mhm.
dew of the morning dawn and, you name it.
Yeah.
And so, in those instances, in those cases, of course, the variables are going to differ.
Mhm,
And what I look at is that if we're looking at a continuum, so let's say that, putting my head above my head, my hand above my head now, and let's say that optimum fertility belongs there. And let's say that somebody's starting like around my chest
mhm,
at wherever they're starting. And that's the kind of quote unquote infertility start point, right?
mhm,
Now, for some people, they don't need to get all the way through to optimum fertility to have a baby. They just need to get to like up to my neck, you
mhm.
know, in that continuum
Yes,
of
to have a baby.
improvement.
Yes, to
To
have a baby, but we want them to have a healthy baby.
Yes,
We
but you
want
see,
that
here's the
baby to not
thing.
end up with eczema, asthma,
For sure, for sure.
neurological issues. Hmm.
And that is very important.
That's
And at
my
the same
pulpit.
time, no, but no, this is I agree with you.
Mhm.
And at the same time, you just getting them to the point where they are able to have a baby is going to, like, because really what's happening right now is that the egg and the sperm are meeting.
Yeah.
There is no fertilization, there is implantation
Right.
failure.
Right.
And this is what's happening for the majority of people who have been infertile for a very long standing
Mm-hmm.
period.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that unless they have blocked fallopian tubes, which then,
Right.
of course,
It's
it's a
not a
different
structural
process
thing, right?
entirely.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is that almost every infertile person that has been trying for 10 years
Mm-hmm.
that has sperm and eggs and unblocked fallopian tubes has had that sperm and egg meet at some point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the unhealthy part has already materialized
Mm-hmm.
many times over,
Yeah.
right? In an inability to see a positive pregnancy test or even to be able to
Miscarriage.
take home a healthy baby.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens is that, and these variations on things, of course, the more that somebody will do to improve and optimize their health, the better their life is going to be in the long term, the better the generational health and their children's children is going to benefit. But in order to have what society deems a healthy baby, right, you're going to need to really, in some instances, close a very short gap.
Yeah. I see what
It
you're
is
saying.
not a
Yeah.
massive gap.
Yeah.
And so that really is what it comes down to. It's understanding what is the gap, where are the obstacles, where are the places of opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
and to also understand that the time to optimize a child's health isn't when a pregnancy is in place,
Right.
isn't when conception has occurred. It's months and sometimes actually up to a year before
Exactly.
a pregnancy is even imagined, because there's a big misconception that happens. People think that, oh, it takes 3 to 4 months to prepare for whatever. No, because an egg maturation cycle happens in 2 phases and it takes up to a year for
Mm-hmm.
that to occur. From primordial follicle, which is all the eggs we'll ever have, to primary follicle takes about 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
From primary follicle to ovulatory follicle, we're looking at another 4 to 6 months. So
Mm-hmm.
literally, the quality of the egg that you are ovulating this month has been in play for the last 12.
Yes.
So it's not a situation of I'm going to all of a sudden start some health kick new regime
Mhm.
and 5 minutes later I'm going to be in a completely different place when
Right.
it comes to my
And
optimal fertility.
absolutely. And to your point a moment ago, in terms of maybe not getting to optimal, but getting, close enough, any improvement is improvement, right? So
Exactly.
whatever changes one can make today to improve one's I'll speak to people with ovaries, to improve one's ability to ovulate a healthier egg in 3 months' time. Start now. I mean, if you have the time to wait to be implement these strategies for up to a year, that would be lovely. And God, don't I wish that we could speak to these people at age 25 to 28 so that we know that by the time they say, okay, I'm
I
33.
would say more like age 10.
Well,
And
yes, yeah,
don't wear nail polish, mums,
ex-
and make sure
uh-huh.
that your little girls don't either. And
Right, right,
you
right.
know.
Yes, yes, yes. Age 10, because now these girls are getting menarche at age 10, which is awfully early, according to, sort of biological timeline, physiological timeline. Thank you for sharing in our conversation here at Health University. One of the ways in which we help people improve their fertility is through our 5-element fertility quiz. Please click on the link below at yourfertilityquiz.com and take this short quiz. You'll receive a free report that includes easy to implement ideas to improve your whole health and your fertile health. Now let's return to our topic in today's episode. The next question, what do you see, because I have my own ideas, as being some of the biggest perpetrators of infertility these days, sort of these insidious environmental perpetrators?
Yeah, I mean, look, with environment, you have every exposure that is going to have an impact. I often hear, and there's a couple of things that I'll say about this. The first thing is that yes, environmental exposures make a difference, and at the same time, they're not treatment.
Mm.
So where is this important? it's important where people have already optimized their lifestyle
Mhm.
and they're still not holding their baby,
Mhm.
right? Because for the types of patients that I see, they usually will tell me that they've been here, they've been there, they've done this, they've improved their diet, they've improved their exercise, they do these things, we're very healthy, we take our supplements. And I'm like, that's great. And you're still infertile.
Mhm.
You're still not holding your baby, right? And so I
And I would
often,
say, but what are you brushing your teeth with? What is the quality of the fabric that you're sleeping on for hopefully 8?
yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes, but, and this is where I used to think those things were extremely important.
Mm-hmm.
And I still don't disagree that they are important. Yes, they are. But the issue with those things is that when we're looking at size of effect size of an intervention, and we're looking at how much and how quickly that will actually change the outcome, those things, it's like diet is extremely important, and you will be able to reduce inflammation in the system. I recommend all my patients be gluten-free, dairy-free,
Mm-hmm.
and that they're eating, close to,
Organic.
whatever it is that they're seeing on the field is essentially how they eat that food on their plate.
Mm-hmm.
And that is very important, but that is a foundational piece. That is an important foundation upon to overlay effective treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, of course, make those changes that are going to be, in the best of your ability to be able to change. However, it's almost like, somebody said it the other day, it's like, I don't want to step over a $100 bill to pick up a quarter, right?
Mm-hmm.
In
Mm-hmm.
the short term, the biggest piece of the puzzle is actually going to be proper diagnostics.
Mm-hmm.
For the people who essentially it has not happened easily, for the people who have experienced, failed treatments. Why? Because the reality that they are facing is that there are, and of course, if we look backwards, like I often say that whatever we're talking about right now, whether it's inability to keep a healthy pregnancy to term, failed treatments, quality of the eggs, quality of the sperm, these things are outcomes, they are results
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
of many biochemical chain reactions that start all the way at the very beginning, like, right there kind of
Mm-hmm.
stage one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is all well and good. But the reality is that IVF tries to fix it from literally like that point of outcome,
Mm-hmm.
which is let's just get an egg, let's just get the sperm, let's put it together, which incidentally, the second you have an embryo and you have that embryo transferred, you're pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't see a positive pregnancy test, or if you don't carry a healthy pregnancy to term, well, you know that your problem is not conception.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Your problem is keeping a pregnancy to term, in which case recurrent miscarriage, whether it's chemical pregnancy or any other reason,
Mm-hmm.
essentially is what's getting in the way here. What's going to have the biggest impact on that in the short term is not the same as what will have that impact in the long term.
Mm-hmm.
So the interventions that we're talking about in terms of, diet has some kind of short term impact, and then obviously more long-term impact. If you want to understand more about what I mean there, is that, for example, if you keep eating saturated fats every day of your life for 40 years, at the end of 40 years you probably will have some blocked arteries,
Mm-hmm.
but that has taken 40 years to develop.
Mm-hmm.
Right. When it comes to fertility, we don't have that kind of time span to actually be able to make differences in the long term. So that's why I actually don't agree that diet and lifestyle is effective treatment. And those things, it's not that I don't recommend that people actually make those changes. Yes, make them. Make them.
It's an important part of an effective treatment.
And
Or what
and
I would
this is
say.
the thing, it's a foundation. It's a
Mm-hmm.
foundational piece.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem that most couples face is that they have not been investigated effectively enough
Mm-hmm.
to understand why they are
Okay.
not holding their baby.
And talk
And
about
even
those
from the
diagnostics,
perspective,
if you will.
yeah, so even from the perspective of like, okay, yes, I've had my IVF cycle, it has failed. And then what does the doctor say? Oh, it's a numbers game, just keep trying.
Right.
It's like, wow. here we go. For
Mhm.
whose benefit should
Right.
I keep
Right.
trying?
Right.
You know, I mean, we know that there are competing interests in the healthcare
Mhm.
system. That's no news.
Mhm.
And couples, unfortunately, get, they get thrown into that crossfire
Mhm.
where there is profit, it's a multi-billion-dollar business, and we have these situations of like, okay, what actually makes a difference? And there's
Mhm.
a lot of research. I mean, the School of Public Health is a champion in environmental research,
Mhm.
specifically focused on fertility and optimizing
Mhm.
fertility and reproductive outcomes. So we know, plastics, phthalates, bisphenols, all of these things will make a difference, but they are usually much more long term.
Although,
And so,
if I may, ultimately, optimally long term, but we can see changes in the follicular fluid pretty quickly if we take out some of these things that create the consequential inflammatory markers or the microplastics in
yes.
the fluids.
And if we're still having the infections that are not diagnosed,
Right.
and if we're still having the hormonal imbalances that need to be addressed,
Right.
and if we're still having, the sperm be poor quality, it makes no difference,
Right.
you
Right.
see?
Right.
And so sometimes it's almost like we need to look at, okay, let's stage the important pieces of
Mhm.
fertility treatment to understand first what are we dealing with. And for the very first step having to be getting a diagnosis.
Yeah.
Unexplained infertility, unexplained
Mhm.
miscarriage
Mhm.
is the worst possible way of actually finding the solution to your problem.
Right.
Why? When was the last time that you fixed a problem you didn't know you had?
Right. Mhm.
Nobody is
Right.
going to be able to do that.
Right.
Like I can tell a story about a leaking toilet that I had. Turned out I actually needed an entire bathroom
Oh
renovation.
my
It
goodness.
wasn't a leaking toilet at all. What
Mm.
I had was a waterproofing issue in my shower.
Mm.
Now,
Mhm.
had I not gone through the steps to
Mhm.
understand, okay, hang on a second, let's take this in stages and get a proper diagnosis,
Yeah, you would have
because I
replaced the
was just
toilet and it
being
would have
told,
happened all over again. You would have had to
well, I
replace the
replaced the
house.
toilet 3 times. And I was like, hang on a second. Like, I ended up saying to the second or third plumber, okay, listen, you're not taking me for another ride. Like, this is not a toilet issue, clearly. Because if it was, the third time that somebody's replaced this thing, it would have fixed it,
Right.
And it took me to go, okay, you know what? Just leave the toilet off the. I just want to see what happens. I'm going on holidays for a week. I'll come back. I'll deal with it when I come back. I come back, the floor is completely dry. There's nothing. And I
Mm.
think, okay, well, maybe it was the flush, maybe it was something. I don't know.
Mhm.
I go in the shower, and literally within a minute, I see the floor bubbling up.
Oh my goodness.
And
Hmm.
I'm like, oh, well, now I understand what the problem is,
Hmm.
right? But
Hmm.
the plumbers, the so-called experts, were
Right.
telling me, oh, it's clearly a toilet leaking.
Uh-huh.
I'm
Uh-huh.
like, well,
Uh-huh.
isn't that interesting to assume? And so when it comes to infertility, that's what essentially will happen. It's a numbers game. Just keep trying.
No,
Well,
no,
until what? Until you run out of time to have a baby?
right, right. Or your relationship dissolves because it's been so stressful. Yeah, or you run out of money and yes, it's a many
Or all of the
pronged.
above?
Yes, it's a many pronged problem. Yes. So you mentioned testing. Do you have a preset list of and you mentioned systems and you mentioned testing in order to get the proper diagnosis. Do you have a preset set of labs that you would want to see? And then you also mentioned bacteria, so I imagine there must be like a gut microbiome component that you're looking at as well.
Well, it's all of the things, and
Hmm.
sometimes even just infectious, like literally sexually transmitted infections that are
Hmm.
undiagnosed. So
Hmm.
yes, microbiome, but then you also have to have a look at. We did a meta-analysis in the clinic looking at the effect of bacterial vaginosis associated bacteria on sperm and sperm quality. And the
Hmm.
results were very, very clear. For men who had a partner who had bacterial vaginosis,
Hmm.
their sperm quality was drastically negatively
Oh,
impacted
wow.
in terms of morphology, motility, and count in many instances
Hmm.
because of BV associated bacteria.
Hmm. Hmm.
So this is the kind of thing that, like, yes, we do have, very specific protocols and things that we do, which obviously we customize for each individual.
Yes.
But what happens is that it's about looking at these types of little thought about issues because, for example, when somebody goes and has a semen analysis, and we only treat couples, right? For the reason that it's a 50-50 equation.
Right.
And so basically what happens is that if somebody comes into my clinic, I'm going to want to see both people.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm going to do all of the testing for the male and I'm going to do all of the testing for the female. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take a very thorough history so that I understand things like, have you had BV? Have you had thrush?
Yes.
Because if they've been trying to conceive and that woman has ever had any of those issues, which most women have at some point,
Mm-hmm.
and they have unprotected intercourse, guess what? In the epididymis, we are going to find bacterial vaginosis associated bacteria.
Mm-hmm.
And unless we treat both partners for BV, we're just going to continue
Pass
this
it back and
process of
forth.
reinfection.
Yeah.
But also, what's going to happen is that is usually one of the things that will be creating an obstacle to optimum fertility and to implantation failure.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the types of areas and I guess the type of thinking that I look at. What's the short term, most biggest bang for your buck type
Mm-hmm.
situation? First of
Mm-hmm.
all, understanding and diagnosing the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's multiple minor factors that are getting in the way. It's not a big thing.
Yes.
People expect that they're doing all of these wonderful things and that there is a big reason and why they're not actually conceiving or taking home a healthy baby. And it's not.
Yeah.
It's
It's the
minor
perfect storm of
factors.
little. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. It's the
Mm-hmm.
tiny things that literally compound upon each other. And then, like, there's a great population-based model on the minor factor impact. It was published in Dr. Robert Jansen's book, Getting Pregnant, Getting Pregnant, I think it's called. And that model is really great to see on paper because what it talks about is like all of these minor factors compounding. In the average population, you have an average of 3 months time to pregnancy. Literally, people conceive without trying. That's why we hear so much of, oh, so and so had a one night stand and got pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so and so had a surprise. Great. When it hasn't happened that easily, when it hasn't happened within 3 months, we know that we need to start to look for minor factors because one minor factor increases the time to, and a minor factor can be irregular cycle. It can
Mm-hmm.
be poor morphology. It can be high DNA fragmentation. All of those constitute as minor factors. Now, it's not unusual for me to see a couple with like 50, 60, 100 minor factors in their particular case.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens is that just an addition of one extra minor factor takes us from an average of 3 months time to pregnancy to an average of 2 years.
Wow.
So it is not a small increase. A second minor factor takes us to an average of 7 years time to pregnancy, and a third minor factor takes us to 40 years time to pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody has 40 years to get pregnant, not even if you start at 10.
Right.
And so what happens is that you are going to end up with a situation that many of these outcomes that we have, which is inability to conceive, inability to keep a pregnancy to term, egg quality issues, which are already outcomes, are outcomes of the combination of these multiple minor factors that happen and
Mm-hmm.
precede it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and this is where the diagnostic is not just about going through and doing blood tests, doing blood work, doing ultrasounds, the diagnostic is also understanding what is the biochemical pathway that's being affected based on these outcomes that we have seen precede
Mm-hmm.
the issue in this particular situation. And every couple, you can line up 10 men with morphology issues, and you will have 10 different major reasons and
Mm-hmm.
combinations of minor factors as to why it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So with diagnostics, it's a combination of labs and other investigations, as well as understanding environment, understanding exposures, understanding what else is getting in the way, and the history.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very kind of like you've got to triangulate and correlate all of these factors to be able to go, okay, what is it really in this particular situation? Because of the couples that I treat, they have so many different things. They're usually doing 98% of the work, but
Mm-hmm.
it's the 2% that they haven't yet found that still means 100% no baby.
Right.
And so what we have to do is like literally dive deep and go, okay, where is this extra
Mm-hmm.
2%?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we focus on
Mm-hmm.
that.
And then in your clinics are all virtual now, or do you have any brick and mortar still?
No, I have no brick and mortar
Okay.
anymore.
So
It's the clinic is completely virtual.
in your clinic, are you able to then prescribe if you see someone like
Yeah.
So you can
Yeah,
prescribe medications. So
we can.
in my clinic, or I'm not able to prescribe medications, so I would need to work with, a medical doctor in order to be able to.
Yeah. So,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, but this is the thing. So basically, in a very
So I do,
similar way.
thankfully have established great relationships. Hmm.
Exactly. And
Hmm.
so that's essentially how we will collaborate, obviously, with local doctors
Hmm.
for testing, but you see, we're guiding the strategy because, these patients, they have already been to their local doctor
Right,
25 million times.
right,
Clearly, there's still no further forward. So
right.
we then send a very comprehensive letter of referral explaining the process, explaining the background, explaining, our
Your
rationale and
discovery.
why
Hmm. Hmm.
with peer-reviewed articles to
Hmm.
go, hey, listen, these are the things that we needed to do.
Hmm.
And then we get it done.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. A couple of conversations back that we talked about, sort of the dissolving of relationships and all of that, the stress of infertility. Tell me, if you will, what is your perception of how chronic stress is degrading to optimal fertility or even an opportunity for fertility?
Yeah, look, I think it's one of those, it's so interesting because I realize the more I do this work and the more years I spend seeing patients and correlating these issues, the more I realize that that conversation is extremely nuanced,
Hmm. Hmm.
and so in the beginning of my career, I used to think like, oh yes, of course, stress because the HPO axis and it's going to imbalance all of those things. And it's true. It's
Hmm.
true. But then the scientist in me also has to look at the fact that lots of people get pregnant in war zones and have healthy
Exactly.
babies,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? And so I need to test my theories and my hypotheses and kind of go, hang on a second. And here's part of this conversation is that for some people, it's extremely predominant
Hmm.
and it's very important. For other people, not so much because their ability to cope and their flexibility and their ability to navigate that
Hmm.
stress, use stress,
Yes.
and figuring out, how to manage that is actually quite nicely handled.
Okay, so
And
they've got
so
the resilience. They're not going over into distress and dis-ease.
precisely,
Mhm.
exactly. And so the thing about it is that for some people, it's going to be very important. For other people, it's not going to be so relevant.
Mhm.
And I
And
think that, and sometimes what happens is that people make decisions because they read these things, that, oh, stress is what's causing you not to be able to conceive. And then they literally go and give up their high paying, lucrative job that is actually funding fertility treatment for them
and their own
because they
creative
think that,
spirit. It was something
because
that they enjoyed.
exactly. Precisely. And because they think that it's the stress that's the problem.
Mhm.
And then 5 years go past and they still haven't had a baby.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it wasn't actually the stress, but now they also don't have the money to actually continue
Mhm.
funding treatment. And that is more stressful
Exactly.
than, what else they were at 5 years before.
Yeah.
So this is kind of where I really see the need for which the healthcare system does not provide with any level of consistency, a very customized and personalized plan that
Mhm.
is based on framework, right? And this is one of the reasons why I went to Harvard for my doctorate, because understanding healthcare systems is the job of public health and how to actually navigate and change those systems so that patients can experience better outcomes
Mhm.
overall through
Mhm.
said
And there
system.
can be specialty or specificity among systems,
Exactly.
where there's
Because not everybody
different.
needs it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Not everybody needs it. But the reality is that for the patients who do need it, they don't get it because nobody gets it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You
So
see? And
and it
that's
should be
where it
flipped. It should be
becomes
everyone has an opportunity to get it, and those who need it are the ones who will cherry pick for it because they need it.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And so we've become very good. Part of what, I have focused my attention on the last 10, 15 years more than ever is actually identifying from a physiological, biochemical perspective, and obviously also medical history, who the people are that best respond to
Hmm.
the framework of treatment that I've developed over the years.
Hmm.
Because if we can understand that, then we can make a case to the healthcare system to
Yeah.
go, all right, this is effective. These are the patients it's effective for.
Mhm.
It's highly cost effective.
That's an
There
understatement.
we go.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Let's insert it. But you see, in healthcare systems and around the world, nobody cares about cost effectiveness until you've proven effectiveness.
Right.
So unfortunately, the way in which healthcare systems operate is that if it's going to cost the same to treat a disease versus preventing it, we're just going to spend the money on treating it because the actual financial cost is the same. They don't take into account the emotional, physical cost of
Mhm.
preventing versus treatment. But unfortunately, when I learned this, I took economics and health and cost effectiveness at Harvard.
Mhm.
When I sat there, literally, I still get goosebumps when I
Uh-huh.
think about this
Uh-huh.
because I just go like,
I,
oh
I
my
get a pit
God.
in my stomach.
Oh, it is the worst
Uh,
realization
mm,
of my entire doctorate is
mm,
to realize that nobody cares about prevention.
mhm. Yep. Yep. And ironically and tragically, that is the very thing that will reverse this whole fertility or
That
infertility
transforms
conversation.
results.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And leads to healthier people making healthier decisions on behalf of a healthier planet and the people and all sentient beings living in it. So yes, yes. And that's where I feel just fortunate that I ended up in the field of traditional Chinese medicine because those systems of observation and diagnosis and treatment are that use nature as its, I don't know, mirror, if you will. They've been in place and proven for 5,000 years. And I giggle now, and I know I'm not alone when I see science proving something that
Yeah.
we've been saying all along, but, within the scientific language. I'm
Yeah.
delighted that I can't, but, my argument is anything that has ever been proven existed before it was proven for
You
a
know, it's so
long, long
funny.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny that you say that because this whole conversation about, forever chemicals, PFAS, like bisphenols, all of this. Like, I remember talking about the need to avoid plastics for 25 years,
Mhm.
25 years ago.
Mhm.
And now it's like the studies, I'm part of a group at Harvard at School of Public Health that publishes these studies.
Mhm.
And it's like, no
No kidding. I know. We
kidding,
insert your
Sherlock.
adjective here. That
Like,
is
oh
very
wow, what a discovery.
right, right. What a discovery of common
Air
sense.
pollution and
Mm.
all of these things. Of course, these things do impact. But
Smoking.
again,
Back to your potential clients. Smoking.
oh yeah, yeah, no, it's amazing. So yeah, there's lots of things. But
Yeah,
I think that the first understanding is understanding that unexplained is not a diagnosis.
it's
Anytime that you hear that, you need to go and find a new doctor.
mhm.
You need to
I mean,
find a new
basically that doctor
practitioner,
is
a new
telling
clinician.
you they can't explain it, so go find something.
Exactly. Exactly. And look, not explained does not mean unexplainable or inexplicable, right?
Exactly.
It
Right.
essentially simply means that somebody has not done like the pearl of the day. We've done all of the tests and everything is normal. Now, all of the tests is, are you ovulating? Do you have blocked fallopian tubes? Do you have a uterus? And do we have sperm? That's four things. That's not
Mhm.
all of the tests,
Right.
you
Right.
know? So
Exactly.
let's just be clear about what our words actually mean. And
Right.
unfortunately, most patients, they will come out of that consultation having heard, we've done all the
All the
tests and
time.
everything is normal.
Yeah.
And they
And
will think that that means that there's nothing else they can do.
exactly, exactly. This has been such a rich conversation. I feel as though I've kept you, and because I could talk with you for another few hours, but I want to be respectful of your time and the viewing and listening audience's time. Is there anything that you want to be sure you want to impart before we kind of begin to wrap up, so that I'm not, we're not signing off because the hour is up, and you'll go, but wait a minute, the most important conversation is.
Look, I think that, one of the things that people can look at this, there's two avenues in which people can further educate themselves. One is I've got my book, Fertility Breakthrough, Overcoming Infertility and Recurrent Miscarriage When Other Treatments Have Failed. It's free on Spotify and free on YouTube. So people can search that. and
And we'll
go
put a
find
link in the
it
show notes.
and
Yeah.
listen to it.
Mhm.
Exactly. And it's also available on Amazon and so on. The other is that I have run a program now since 2011 called the Fertility Challenge. And it's a 4-week program that is completely free,
Mhm.
that literally educates people on the things that they need to know, whether it is nutrition, how to move, what diagnostic tests are the basic core that they need to get done. You
Mhm.
know, all of these things that are like the minimum kind of
The beginning. Yeah.
the very foundational parts
Mhm.
that everybody needs to know be implementing, you know.
Yeah.
So that's something that they can just search Gabriella Rosa's The Fertility Challenge. They can go to my website fertilitybreakthrough.com, because sometimes, you know, like, and the thing about it is that there are many ways to educate yourself. What we said in the beginning is the truth, though, is that knowing that you are educating yourself with accurate information versus don't go. If somebody
Yes.
talks about seed cycling, please skip them, go to the next
Yes.
person.
Do not get your
Okay.
expertise from TikTok, please.
No, or
Or-
Instagram, or you
Right.
know, yeah,
Right.
you name it.
Or a group chat. Again, these are the kind
Oh
of rabbit
God.
holes that I understand, and I know you do as well, Gabriella, the just the primal need for support for someone to
Oh, for sure.
who feels like they understand what you're going through, but that they understand what you're going through does not mean that they are the ones who can help you out. So
Exactly.
please seek expertise, and there are ways
Yeah.
to vet those of us who are experts, and we're not experts to pat ourselves in the back. We're experts to serve you. So it's
And you know, we've been doing this a long time.
Mhm.
You know, like when you've been doing something for 20 years
Yep,
plus, like,
yep.
you
24
know,
over here.
same. Actually, we've been the same amount of time. You know, when you've done something for that long, you develop a level of pattern recognition that is very unique for the type of patient that you treat.
Mhm.
But like, I can't speak for, you know, like, I don't know, it's like people who have toe problems. Like, I have no idea,
Right, right.
right? Like, that's just, I wouldn't even hazard a guess,
Nope,
you know?
that's
But if
that's
you're
why we
trying
love
to
to
get
have a good
pregnant,
referral network, right?
exactly. But if you're trying to get pregnant and you haven't been able to, well, I can speak to that. You know.
Beautiful. Yes, you can. And this conversation has been so evident that you can. And I'm really, really grateful to have you on. I just love talking with you. You're so easy to listen to and easy to understand what can be sometimes a pretty complex conversation. So
Yeah.
thank you
Thank you.
very, very much for your time today. Let's see if we can find a way to have you on back and we'll do a part two.
Sounds great. Thank you for having me.
All right. And so as we close out this episode of Health University, we close out with our typical theme or motto, class dismissed. Hey, thanks for joining us today here at Health University. If you want more episodes like this at Health University, you can find them wherever you get your podcasts. And make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you never miss an episode. If you have any thoughts or questions, please drop a comment down below. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you at our next episode of Health University. But for now, class dismissed.